The poacher's trap had sliced through the female cheetah's hind leg like a blade, transforming her final hours into a terrible ordeal beneath the unforgiving sun of the Kenyan savanna. Next to her lifeless form, a 7-week-old cub snarled at the approaching twilight, striking out with paws no bigger than plums. He was emaciated, parched, and guarding a mother who would never rise again. Rebecca Torres, a 31-year-old photojournalist from Boston, observed from inside the safari vehicle. She'd traveled to East Africa to capture the cold numbers behind wildlife crime, keeping her professional detachment firmly in place behind the viewfinder. She'd never owned animals, never raised children, and built her career on an ability to remain stoically unmoved. But watching that small, fierce creature wage an impossible war against the approaching void, something inside her broke open. "He refuses to let anyone close," the lead warden explained, his voice heavy with resignation. "We may need to use the capture net. It'll scar him psychologically." "Absolutely not," Rebecca heard herself say. She pushed open the vehicle door and stepped into the crisp evening air. She removed her thick canvas jacket, saturated with her signature vanilla scent and the day's accumulated heat, despite the protests from the wardens. She approached the deceased mother and the combative cub with deliberate slowness. She halted about a meter away and lowered herself to the ground. She avoided direct eye contact. Instead, she softly laid her jacket on the earth beside him. "You're safe now," she murmured. "I won't let anything happen to you." The cub went motionless. He tested the air with his nose. The jacket's smell was unfamiliar, but it emanated comfort. Compelled by survival instinct and the penetrating cold descending on the plains, he gradually moved away from his mother's cooling form. He investigated the jacket cautiously, then surrendered into its folds, pressing his small face into Rebecca's lingering scent. Rebecca gathered him up, jacket wrapped around him. He offered no resistance. He simply trembled against her warmth. She called him Asher. The adjustment to sanctuary life proved devastating. During the initial 2 days, Asher seemed intent on willing himself to death. They placed him in a climate-controlled nursery, but he rejected every feeding attempt. He circled the confined space without rest, emitting shrill, whistling cries, the panic call of a cheetah cub separated from its family. His condition deteriorated rapidly. His spine became visible beneath his spotted coat and his gaze lost its spark. "He's in mourning," Dr. Maya Patel, the facility's head veterinarian, explained to Rebecca on night 3. "He needs the sound of a mother's pulse. Without that biological anchor, he believes he's already lost. If he refuses food again tonight, he won't survive." Rebecca studied the fragile animal cowering in the shadows. She abandoned thoughts of her assignment deadlines. She disregarded the facility's sanitation procedures. She entered the nursery, secured the entrance, and stretched out on the bare cement floor. She lifted the weakened cub and positioned him directly against her sternum, fur against skin, precisely over her beating heart. "Can you hear that?" she whispered, gently stroking behind his ears. "Just focus on that sound." For several tense moments, Asher remained rigid. Then he detected it. Thump, 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 the constant, measured percussion of life itself. It replicated the feeling of resting against his mother's chest. Asher released a prolonged exhale. His small frame melted into Rebecca. He burrowed into the curve of her throat and began to purr, a sound resembling a miniature motor vibrating through his entire body. When Rebecca presented the bottle again, he seized it immediately and consumed it hungrily. Rebecca remained in that nursery all night and throughout the following day. She contacted her network in Boston and fabricated excuses about production complications, transforming her 3-week contract into a 2-month stay. She relocated her belongings into the animal care facility. For 8 weeks, Rebecca Torres became a surrogate parent. They created their own system of communication. She discovered that cheetahs are uniquely neurotic among large predators. They require perpetual validation. If she stepped out briefly, Asher would wail until her return. When she settled on the floor to edit her footage, Asher would scale her back, positioning himself across her shoulders like living jewelry, grooming her hair with his abrasive tongue. He bonded with her entirely. To Asher, this woman with the dark eyes and the reliable heartbeat wasn't human. She was his family. She meant survival. But reality was closing in, merciless and demanding. The final warning from Boston arrived via email with urgent priority. Report back immediately for fall programming or your employment ends. Rebecca searched desperately for alternatives, but her entire existence, her debts, her professional reputation, her very sense of self, existed in America. Asher was a creature of the wilderness. He belonged beneath African skies, not trapped in a city apartment. Departure felt like cutting out part of herself. She assembled her luggage during the pre-dawn hours to escape a painful goodbye. She visited the nursery one final time. Asher lay sleeping, his small chest expanding and contracting in peaceful rhythm. Rebecca pressed her lips to his forehead, breathing in his earthy, sweet scent one last time. "Stay strong, Asher," she whispered brokenly. She forced herself to leave before he stirred. The journey back to America consumed an entire day. Rebecca wept through all of it, conscious of an emptiness where warmth used to rest against her chest. 5 years dissolved into memory. Rebecca Torres ascended to prominent news broadcaster. She reported on political upheavals, international conflicts, and high-profile events. She achieved success, accumulated wealth, and earned widespread recognition. She was also profoundly empty inside. She attempted relationships that withered and acquired a spacious apartment that resembled a gallery, not a home. Her sole connection to meaning came through monthly updates from Dr. Maya. "He's extraordinary," the messages described. "He's reached 125 pounds now, the swiftest in the facility, though he remains unusual." One message became Rebecca's recurring nightmare. "He serves as an educational ambassador for guests, but he's constantly looking. Whenever he detects an American voice or notices a woman with dark features, he rushes to the barrier. He calls to them. He expects. He hasn't moved on." In 2025, Rebecca orchestrated her return. She proposed a multi-part series on wildlife preservation, obtaining funding to return to Kenya. She kept her true intentions hidden from the staff. She needed to discover if the connection still existed. She positioned herself beyond the main habitat, concealed behind a vehicle, observing him. Asher reclined on an elevated rock formation 50 meters distant. He'd transformed into something magnificent. A streamlined, powerful hunter, unrecognizable from the infant she'd nursed. Rebecca emerged from her hiding place. She made no gesture. She simply vocalized using the distinctive high-frequency sound she'd used in the nursery years before. "Asher!" The cheetah's head jerked up instantaneously. "Asher!" He didn't walk. He launched forward like lightning. He closed the distance in heartbeats, pure velocity and spotted gold. He collided with the chain-link barrier, not aggressive, but frantic. He pressed his face against the metal mesh, racing along the length of it, releasing that piercing, whistling cry. "Chirp! Chirp! Chirp!" Rebecca collapsed to the ground on the opposite side, flattening her palms against the barrier. Asher licked her fingertips through the openings, his golden eyes never leaving hers. He hadn't forgotten. Rebecca understood the world deserved to witness this. She coordinated a live broadcast from the Nairobi headquarters of Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, transmitted directly to morning programming in New York. She instructed Dr. Maya, "Bring him to the set, but don't announce his entrance to anyone, not the viewers, not me." The broadcast commenced. Rebecca stood at the presenter's desk, appearing composed and authoritative. We frequently dismiss the cognitive capacity of wildlife. We assume primal drives supersede emotional connections. But occasionally, love creates an imprint that DNA cannot eliminate. The studio entrance opened. Dr. Maya appeared holding a loose restraint attached to a 125-pound cheetah. Rebecca heard claws clicking across the floor. She maintained focus on the script, her pulse accelerating. The sound penetrated the hushed studio. Chirp, chirp. Rebecca halted mid-word. She pivoted. Asher stood 5 meters away. He became absolutely still, his amber gaze fixed on the woman in professional attire. He angled his head slightly. Then he jerked the restraint from Dr. Maya's grasp. The production team gasped. Security personnel tensed. Asher surged across the studio. He didn't threaten. He elevated onto his rear legs and encircled Sarah's upper body with his massive forelimbs, pressing his face into her throat, nearly toppling her backward. On broadcast television, the professional veneer shattered. Rebecca released her microphone and embraced the predator, burying her face in his coat. "Forgive me," she cried, captured by her lapel microphone. "I'm so sorry I abandoned you. I'm here to stay now." Asher's purr resonated so powerfully it filled the entire studio like rolling thunder. He refused to release her, closing his eyes and settling his head exactly where it belonged. Directly over her heartbeat. 3 months later, Rebecca Torres' letter of resignation sat on a desk in New York. She relocated to Nairobi permanently, accepting a position with the Wildlife Conservation Alliance. She inhabits a modest cottage on the sanctuary property. Every dawn she walks to the enclosure. Asher is invariably there, waiting, and now he arrives with companions. He sired offspring with a rescued female who later died. Rebecca has assumed the role of surrogate grandmother. 2 awkward cubs now stumble to the fence alongside him. They recognize Rebecca's scent. They respond to her voice. And they understand that she belongs to their family. The journalist had pursued narratives her entire career, but ultimately the only narrative that held significance was the one that guided her home.